What's the creepiest thing you've seen about other kids' families? Viewer edition.
Story 1.
So this story isn't as horrific as the others or anything, but just very unsettling. I have these two friends that are sisters, identical twins, so they have the same friends, go to the same places, they're just usually always together socially. They go to their friend's house all the time to hang out. So for some backup context, the friend of the twins' older brother is a lying, manipulative bully, and I was his main target. He makes himself seem like a perfect little angel on the outside, but on the inside he shows major signs of narcissism, and from what I've experienced, I think he's a sociopath. He's caused me mental scars. But there's a certain circle of friends who sees through him, same for the friend's parents. He's stolen my pet before and killed it, showing no remorse, but I'm not going to go on about him, but you get the idea. He's the mean rich kid who seems to be a nice kid. The dad isn't so perfect also. So the three girls are going to their friend's room to change into their bathing suits, and the two sisters are expecting for the door to be closed when they change. But the friend doesn't, so they're like, aren't you going to close the door? And the friend is basically saying no because it's normal, but the two sisters know it's not. It's especially weird because they have two other guys in the house, and they're, I want to say, 11 to 12, so it's weird. So they push to get the door closed, and they do, but then mid-change, the dad barges in and says, "Boo!" and chuckles. He knew that they were getting ready for the pool, and he didn't know if they were changed or not. What a creep. Just makes me think about what else goes on in the house. Story 2. It's the other way around. I was the weird kid because for me and my siblings, it was strange to see families that would be considered normal. I would go to my cousin's place across the street, spick and span, maybe a few toys on the floor, a board game on the table. But for us, our house was something comparable to a hoarder's mess. Trash and such piled up, various belongings still stuck in boxes where they'd never see the light of day again. It never felt homey like the farmer neighbor's place down the way whose home is tinted with sepia and nostalgia in my memories, but it was my home. I can recall having CPS called not once but twice and being coached on what to say to them so that I wouldn't be removed from my mother's care. They show up, we clean up, and the cycle repeats. It was awful. I can't help but wonder how many kids ever actually made it past the threshold of our door. I can never recall playing inside with kids my sister would hang out with, but I think if anyone did see it, that they would have found it weird. Story 3. When I was in elementary school and middle school, I had a friend who was really happy and bubbly. She was a joy to be around, and so when she invited me over to her house for a sleepover, I assumed she would have a fun family. I was very wrong. The second we entered her house, her mood completely changed. She became silent and dreary. We were greeted by her mom, who was a tall, lanky woman with stringy black hair. She smiled, but seemed uncomfortable with the thought of me in their house. Her father didn't live with them. I immediately felt uneasy, even as a small child. My friend was very adamant that I be very quiet and clean up after myself, even though I would do that already. Her mom never watched TV, she just sat in a room at the end of the hall at a desk. I have no idea what she was doing, but she always sat very still. The house was always very clean, and my friend would scold me if I made a sound any louder than a whisper. I would sleep over semi-often and get used to the silence, but it's still very eerie to remember.
I have such a hard time figuring out why people like this even have kids. They don't seem to like to have them around. Or maybe something happened after she had the kid and the mom's going through some trauma. It sounds like there's some trauma going on there. I don't know what the answer is, but that is no way for a kid to live. And, parents, if you're starting to lean towards this stuff, maybe therapy might be helpful. Maybe you need to work through some issues, and that's okay. Lots of people go to therapy. I go to therapy. But please don't put your kids through a childhood like this. It seems kind of miserable. Hey there, folks. Content warning for this video. A number of these stories contain recountings of child abuse and even, unfortunately, S-abuse. And so if you're sensitive to those topics, you might want to just know that they're coming, or you may even wish to skip this video if it's too tough for you.
Story 4.
For the first story, I have a similar story. In 6th grade, I was best friends with one of the quiet kids. She was very sweet, but also scared most of the time. I'll call her Sarah. Anyway, I tried to invite her over to my house once since we had never hung out outside of school. She told me she couldn't, and when asked, she said something along the lines of, "I can't, my father won't let me hang out with people that don't speak Spanish or aren't relatives." I told my mother this, since I was the type of kid to tell my mother everything, and she offered that she could speak to Sarah's father and that maybe he'll allow it. I told my friend this, and she seemed very scared about that idea. She said that it wouldn't change his mind or anything. Okay. Now, Sarah was really into Harry Potter at the time and would read the books at school. I wasn't as much into it and had the whole collection of books they were gifted and offered them all to her. From that, I learned that if her father ever caught her with any Harry Potter book, it would either be destroyed in front of her or thrown into the garbage in front of her because he thought Harry Potter wasn't good for her. She ended up taking a couple of the books anyway and said that she'd try her best to keep them a secret. I don't know if the books were ever found by her father or not. Sarah ended up confiding more and more to me about her home life. She had a few siblings, I forget how many, maybe 3 or 4, and all were younger than her. I forget all the things she told me, but eventually she told me that her father beat her mother frequently and was touching the second oldest sibling, I think, and Sarah inappropriately. She wanted me to keep it a secret. I remember asking her if she wanted help, and she nodded. We were in the playground. I told my mother, and she contacted the school counselor, who contacted social services. I would also talk about Sarah with the school counselor. I remember having a panic attack that night. Police showed up at their house and questioned the kids and the mother. All of the kids lied because they were scared about what was going on. The mother lied as well, but I think that was because she was threatened so much by the father. Sarah did tell me that her father was threatening to send Sarah back to their native country, which was a third world country, if she spoke out against what was going on. I guess her sister got sent back to that country in the past. The police did a really crappy job with it. There were multiple reports on file about that family from neighbors hearing screaming from that house. The police just let the effing case go after interviewing the family because none of them said anything useful to the case. They didn't even question me, the one person that was told most of all the crap that was going on there. We ended up graduating from that school and were off to high school. My mother decided to homeschool me and we moved away. I had another friend that I kept in touch with that went to that high school, and I asked him if I could talk to Sarah. He ended up finding her, and she told me that her father found out about me and that she wasn't allowed to speak to me anymore. We talked through Roblox when we weren't in school, but before, when I was still naive to her situation, she tricked me into deleting our conversations and removing her as a friend because she told me she was hacked. I was so stupid back then. I still have messages on there between her and my other friends I just mentioned since we were all in a group, but there's nothing on there about her father or anything. Since then, I haven't heard from her. Sarah had told her other friends, I was friends with her too, about what was going on, but the friend never did anything about it. The friend was going through crap of her own, but that's no effing excuse. In 6th grade, we were 10 or 11. These kind of situations are so heartbreaking to hear about because it really does make people lose faith in both the police and child protective services. And I don't want to say that you shouldn't contact those people. Child protective services have helped a lot of people, but they're fallible. They don't always get the job done the first time. Sometimes it has to be reported multiple times, and that can be putting people in danger. And I don't know what the solution is, but I do wish that there was more education within like schools and whatnot about what kids can do if they're in those situations, how to keep records of stuff so that they have evidence to put up against these people, something. I don't know what the answer is, but something more needs to be done, and I hope that Sarah is okay wherever she is.
Story 5. Concerning Story 4 from the original video, I've seen something like that when I was 11. A kid invited me over to his house one day. We went into his house, left our jackets on the couch next to the door, and went to his room. Later, his mom comes home and barges into his room demanding to know why the jackets and backpacks were just laying on the couch. It turned into an ugly argument when he stormed into the front room and pointed out that she did the same thing with her purse and coat and mentioned how he was fed up with her freaking out about trivial things. I told him, let's just go, after he brought up how I was the first friend he invited over in over a year. After we left the house, he told me that his mom scolded him and the last friend he had over because the throw pillows on the couch weren't the way she wanted them. Bottom line, if you're that adamant about having a clean and tidy house, don't have kids, or at least don't force your lifestyle onto them. It really is sad when kids can't be kids because their parents are neurotic clean freaks. It's not going to hurt or kill you if your throw pillows are all over the couch or there's a bag and jacket on a couch. Story 6. That first story got me. I was abused by several family members over the years. People noticed and did nothing. Nothing got done until I finally broke down one day and told the school counselor. The offenders were sent to prison, but not for very long, and my family blamed me and shunned me, saying I shouldn't have told them because it was a private family matter. I'm still effed up and have been repeatedly traumatized by other abusers. I'm only 29. I'm trying hard to fight and heal, but damn did all of that F me up bad. My therapist and psychiatrist have their work cut out for them. I don't care if anyone thinks I'm evil. Child molesters deserve an eternity of pure torture. They ruin children's lives and get minimal prison time for it. They shouldn't be able to see the light of day again. If they ruined the life of an innocent, helpless child, then they deserve to have theirs ruined too.
Honestly, I'm kind of with you here. I'm a big believer in rehabilitation for most crimes, but there is something about just destroying the life of an innocent, of a child, where it's like, I can't forgive that kind of crap. You know, I don't. The risk of rehabilitating them, but them repeat offending is just terrifying. Like if someone, like robbed a convenience store and didn't hurt someone, then it's like, well, if they relapse, they rob another convenience store and hopefully no one gets hurt. But these people, if they do, no, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but I'm very understanding of hating and not forgiving people who do this kind of crap.
Story 7. This goes back to the mid-70s. I was attending an elementary school friend's birthday party. His mother was ecstatic when she saw me. She doted on me to the exclusion of her own son. She heaped praise on me for my appearance, calling me a perfect Aryan. Something I had no context for, but I knew my friend was on the verge of tears being ignored by his mother on his birthday. My first taste of dealing with white supremacists who would harass me until I hit my 30s as my eye color got darker and my hair fell out. For the record, my heritage is 40% Irish, 25% English, 23% German, 7% Spanish, and the rest is a mix of other things. This kind of mix is typical of someone descended from Irish prostitutes. Far more proud of my hooker great-grandma than I could ever be if I were truly a pure Aryan. Story 8. I reported suspected abuse twice. Once while I was a chaperone for a school outing. A little girl told me she wished I was her mom and that her mom hit her all the time. When I told the principal and school staff, they did nothing. I knew her mom a little and found out the principal just talked to her mom. Second time, kids in the neighborhood that I saw often and was familiar with told me about abuse going on in their home. I called CPS and once again, nothing was done and I was told there were no bases for claims. I don't know what happened to those poor kids, but damn, I tried. Kids reached out for help. Me being an adult, I spoke up, but nobody in authority seemed to take it seriously. Story 9. Story 1 in the original video made me sick to my stomach. To do such awful things to a kid at a young age is sick and requires a super level of evil. Even in prison, that crap don't slide. At least the kids recovered from that and learned what real love is. I've worked at places for kids who were abused, and it takes a long time for them to trust the opposite sex, both boys and girls. And I know a friend who dated a girl who had a similar experience. It takes a lot of time and effort to help such kids, because sadly, a lot of them try to escape this world. Story 10. It took me 3 years after my abuse had stopped for me to report it. It was the hardest thing to do, and God, I feel bad for the girls in the first story. To the people who have been through that or are going through that, please, please, please report it. My therapist, the first mandated reporter I talked to about the abuse at the time, was a godsend, and I will forever be grateful for her. She did everything she could, and I will never forget that.
I'm extremely sorry for what you went through, being assaulted like that. I can't imagine the mental toll that it's put on you, but thank you for sharing your story and about the fact that your therapist, and it seems like whoever was informed about this stuff, actually did stuff and had a positive effect. Because like I said earlier on with the first story, we kind of lose faith in Child Protective Services and stuff like that when we hear these bad stories, but it is good for folks to know that there are people out there who can help, and reporting at least gives you a chance at getting that help.
Story 11. My creepy childhood story. My mom was abusive. Not physically, well, only rarely, and she was good at faking being nice. All adults believed her, but my friends knew something was off and kinda were afraid of her too. And at one time I was being gaslighted by my mom, and my friend supported me, and because she was there at the time, helped me realize I was being gaslighted. Story 12. Last story literally made me realize my parents used to lock me in rooms as punishment, and I thought it was completely normal until I told someone about it. Some of the rooms had baby monitors, and they told me relatively recently that they'd laugh at me when I was crying or wanted something like milk or something due to being a toddler. So, please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.